Black Wall Street wasn't just burned, it was billed. In 2019, HBO opened a superhero series with a sequence that made a lot of people deeply uncomfortable. Not because it was violent, though it was. Not because it was disturbing, though it was that too. But because it was real. The Watchmen sequence depicting the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre was historically accurate in ways that most American history curricula have never been. For millions of viewers, it was the first time they'd encountered the event at all. That's the first question worth asking before we get into the economics. Why did it take a prestige superhero series to make Greenwood visible to a mass audience in 2019, 98 years after it happened? The answer is the same reason the economic bill from 1921 has never been paid. Both involve the same institutional decision: suppression, the Krypton Frame. The Superman origin story resonates across cultures because it captures something true about losing an entire world. But here's the specific detail that makes the Greenwood parallel precise. Krypton wasn't destroyed by natural forces. It was destroyed by institutional failure. The Science Council refused to believe Jor-El's warnings. The civilization was lost not because the threat was invisible, but because the people with power to respond chose not to. Greenwood's destruction followed the same architecture. Law enforcement didn't fail to respond to the mob. It participated. Municipal government didn't stand aside. It subsequently passed ordinances specifically designed to prevent black residents from rebuilding on their own land. And then, like Krypton, the memory was suppressed. A civilization was destroyed. The survivors were told to rebuild without compensation. Then the event itself was erased from the record. That is not an analogy to Krypton. That is Krypton with documentation. What Greenwood actually was. Let's be precise about what was destroyed in 1921. The Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, contained over 600 black-owned businesses in a 35-block area. Its own hospital, its own law firms, its own newspapers, its own hotels, its own schools. The economic architecture of Greenwood was structurally sound in a specific way that matters for this argument. The Greenwood dollar circulated within the community up to 36 times before leaving. Today, in most black communities, that number is estimated at 6 hours. That difference is not cultural, it's structural. Greenwood was a closed economic loop. By necessity, because segregation prevented dollars from leaving and prevented external capital from entering except on extractive terms. The community converted forced exclusion into an engine of internal wealth accumulation. On May 31, 1921, a white mob, deputized by law enforcement, supported by municipal government, using planes to drop incendiary devices, destroyed it in 16 hours. As many as 300 people were killed. Thousands were rendered homeless. 35 blocks of institutional infrastructure were reduced to ash. No one was ever charged with a crime. The insurance denial, the detail that changes everything. Here is the specific fact that almost no discussion of Black Wall Street examines carefully. Black residents filed $1.8 million in insurance claims. Every single one was denied. Not most, everyone. The mechanism was precise and deliberate. Designating the event a riot, rather than a massacre, prevented insurance companies from having to pay benefits to Greenwood residents. That naming decision was a financial instrument. The legal classification was specifically chosen to void insurance obligations across the board. One exception exists in the record. A white business owner was compensated. Black claimants, every single one, were denied. And while insurance claims were being denied, the city passed a new fire ordinance specifically designed to prevent most victims from rebuilding on their own land. The legal challenge to that ordinance was led by attorney Buck Colbert Franklin, father of John Hope Franklin, one of the most important historians of Black American life in the 20th century. The father argued insurance claims in the rubble of Greenwood in 1921. The son spent his career documenting what that rubble meant for American history. That lineage is itself the story of how Black intellectual capital gets forged under conditions of systematic economic destruction. What nobody tells you about the rebuilding. Here is the part of the Greenwood story that almost never gets told. By 1927, 6 years after the massacre, Greenwood had hundreds of Black-owned businesses and more homes in the district than before the destruction. 6 years without a single insurance payment, without government assistance, against active municipal obstruction. That rebuilding is one of the most extraordinary economic achievements in American history, and it is almost completely absent from the cultural conversation about Black Wall Street. The "they rebuilt" narrative gets weaponized, used to suggest the destruction wasn't ultimately consequential. That framing is dishonest in a specific way. Rebuilding without compensation, without the original capital base, without the institutional infrastructure that had accumulated over decades, that is not recovery. That is starting over under permanent structural disadvantage while the people who destroyed your assets face no accountability. The rebuilt Greenwood was a remarkable achievement. It was also structurally weaker than what it replaced, because it was rebuilt from nothing, bearing the full cost of reconstruction while receiving none of the insurance payments legally owed. That structural weakness is the compounded loss. The second destruction. Most people don't know that Greenwood was destroyed twice. The first destruction was the 1921 massacre, violent, immediate, and total. The second was slower, more bureaucratic, and in some ways more complete. Integration, the hard-won achievement of the civil rights era, paradoxically accelerated Greenwood's commercial decline. As Black residents gained legal access to white-owned businesses, the economic self-containment that had made Greenwood prosperous began to dissolve. Then urban renewal delivered the decisive blow. The Interstate 244 highway was built directly through the Greenwood district. Highway placement through Black communities was not a local accident. It was a documented national pattern. Robert Moses in New York, the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, Overtown in Miami, Black communities were systematically selected as highway corridors because their residents had the least political power to resist, and their property had been deliberately suppressed in value by redlining. Greenwood was destroyed by a mob in 1921, then rebuilt by its own community with zero external support, then destroyed again by government infrastructure policy in the 1960s. 3 mechanisms, 4 decades, zero compensation, the current balance sheet. The institutions that participated in or benefited from Greenwood's destruction still exist. The city of Tulsa exists. The insurance companies whose predecessor institutions denied $1.8 million in claims still operate. The federal government that administered urban renewal programs still functions. In 2025, the city of Tulsa announced a reparations commitment, $24 million for housing, $60 million for historic preservation, $21 million for land acquisition and small business support. The mayor acknowledged publicly that no insurance claims were ever paid and that every promise made to help rebuild Greenwood in 1921 was broken. That acknowledgement matters, not because $105 million resolves a liability whose compounded value is orders of magnitude larger, but because it represents something specific, an institution admitting on the record that it owes a debt it has not paid. The liability has been implicitly acknowledged. What remains is the methodology for calculating what it's actually worth. That is not a political question. It is an accounting question, and accounting questions have answers. HBO's Watchmen depicted reparations as a functioning government program, specific eligibility criteria, specific payment mechanisms, specific economic goals. It was fiction, but it was the correct analytical register, treating the question as a policy and finance problem rather than a moral debate. Greenwood was proof of concept. It demonstrated what Black economic self-determination produces when permitted to operate. It was destroyed, not by market forces, not by economic competition, but by organized violence, institutional denial, and government infrastructure policy across 4 decades. The bill was presented in 1921 when $1.8 million in insurance claims were filed. It was rejected. It has been accumulating interest ever since. Black Wall Street wasn't just burned, it was billed. And the bill has never been paid. If you want to go deeper on the economic framework, the litigation history, and what a serious accounting of the Greenwood liability actually looks like, the full analysis is at Black Wall Street Odds. Link in the description.